And welcome back. This is Jack and Mack's Thack. Just got back from spring break, so still getting into the vibe. This is monthly number 16 in Charles Dickens' Our Mutual Friend. First chapter is called Setting Traps. Now, this first chapter involves Mr. Riderhood, who's obviously the villain of the book, and Bradley Headstone, who's also has become a villain of the book because he's so obsessed with Lizzie. Now, Bradley's so obsessed with Lizzie, he wants to find anybody that can find her. We now know that Riderhood is the keeper of the lock house, which is where they did boats and stuff.
Flashwater Weir Mill Lock.
Yeah, and so they agree to kind of go after Lizzie, but Riderhood is really angry. Page 620, he's said these words with the utmost concentration of rage and hatred. So it's not boding well for Bradley Headstone. Basically, that's all that chapter. They head to Riderhood's home, and Bradley and Riderhood pass out, and ends with a big rainstorm. And obviously, rain is purifying, but we don't know if that's gonna make them better. It also represents turmoil. So essentially, this chapter illustrates how Bradley's still really obsessed with Lizzie, and that he won't have anything stop him, and he still wants to go for it. Chapter 2, The Golden Dustman rises a little. Now, I thought it was funny. I don't know if you noticed this, Mac, but when the dust rises a little, rising of the dust, I think this is where Dickens is trying to tell us that Mr. Boffin is trying to rise to his potential. He's starting to get there as somebody who doesn't get taken advantage of anymore. And he's talking with Mr. and Mrs. Lamley, and let's see. On page 631, something that I thought was really interesting is that when Mr. Boffin replies to Mr. and Mrs. Lamley, he says, "The court, if I am the court, does object. The court objects for two reasons. First, because the court don't think it fair. Second, because the dear lady, Mrs. Court, if I am Mr. Court, gets distressed by it." Because Mrs. Lamley says the court objects, and it's a little confusing as to why she calls them the court, but maybe it's to just distinguish them as higher social class than the Lamleys. But maybe Dickens is making fun of the Boffins. Who knows? But all right. So they talk. They're being impolite. They're talking, embracing. Another dinner party, and Mr. Boffin and Mrs. Boffin have started to become a little bit higher in their social standing. Now in chapter 3, this gets a little feisty. Now, Mac, why don't you talk about chapter 3 and the Silas Wegg situation with Mr. Boffin? I'll let you finish chewing there. Give you a little bit of a background. Silas Wegg has found out that about the will, obviously, and he's now making it known to Boffin that he has this asset, and Mr. Boffin, and he wants to use it as a weapon towards Mr. Boffin. So
he makes the big reveal, and Boffin goes along with it, and Wegg kind of is really enjoying this new power that he has, because he's never really had real power.
Yeah.
And so he's kind of telling him to go around, do stuff for him, and he's telling him, this is how it's going to be, you're going to put your wealth back in, etc. Kind of just
give me a third of your land.
Right, pushing him around, being like, if you don't do this, then we'll will go to the crown with it. But really, I don't think he wants Boffin to really not listen to him. Like, I think if Boffin were to actually be like, alright, let's take it to the crown, then Wig would be like, oh, no.
Yeah, like, let's not do that. It's an interesting tactic, actually. Like to back out, if they say yes. In China, I can actually make this thing, there were a lot of peddlers that would come up on the street and ask if you wanted to buy this shirt for, like, 100 RMB or whatever. And you could get it for probably 8 RMB. And so you say, alright, 100, and they say no, and I said no, and then you just start walking away, and they just go, 75, 50, 25, 10, 5, and then you turn around right there, and then say, alright, I'll get it for 5. Just like Silas Wegg does, it's that you can't accept the offer, because if you accept the offer, then you're stuck. So
Right.
Silas Wegg is like, well, actually, that was probably a bad example. I don't know why I wanted to get that off my chest.
That's okay.
Maybe I just had to filter
nice.
that. I apologize.
No, that's
And got ripped off too many times, I guess.
no. Anyways, but yeah. So, well, Boffin could do that if he was
He could, if
of
he's
a higher social rank.
That's right.
But he's trying to get there. But he's kind of just dust. So he's kind of just being pushed by the wind, and he's
settling, yeah.
just kind of going up and down, and it's hard to tell where he's going to land.
Interestingly, on page 642, there is a historical reference that I checked out when Mr. Boffin is complaining about his conditions of the, we'll call it a treaty or a peace settlement. He says, dreadful, 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 I shall die in the workhouse. Now, workhouses were meant for the poor. And another one of Charles Dickens' plays, his most famous, I would argue, is A Christmas Carol. And when Scrooge has his famous line, then they better do so and save the money, decrease the surplus population. Population. He's talking about the workhouses, and they better go to the workhouses. The workhouses were set up by governments to provide for the poor. Basically, they were big warehouses where you couldn't eat. I mean, they give you rice infested with rats, and it would be very cold. And the workhouses,
Poor living conditions.
Very poor. In early England times, the workhouses were. You did not want to be poor and work in the workhouses. That was. Because you'd have to live there, and you'd have to turn the wheels with, instead of water turning the wheels, you'd have 10 guys trying to push the mill or whatever. Anyway, I thought that was interesting that he brought that up, and reminded me of A Christmas Carol. At the end of the fourth book, chapter 3, when we find out that Mr. Boffin has been playing Wegg this whole time, because he gets out of his carriage to go home and he laughs silently. He stooped at it within. He laughed silently and stumped home. So he still has something up his sleeve. We don't know what it is, but he obviously has a plan, and he's not worried about Wegg. So, and chapter 4 is about the marriage. Why don't you take that?
It's really great, and well, yeah, that's a given. But they do it secretly, and it's her, him, and her dad. Plus, there's an old pensioner that just happens to be there. Old Gruff and Glum.
Yep.
Double peg.
Yep.
And like as soon as he sees her, he kind of just brightens up, and it's really nice. And the best part is the dad is just paranoid the whole time. Our Wilford keeps thinking that his wife's gonna jump out of the bushes at every house step. So it's funny.
Sorry. Jet lag.
Yeah. I got you.
Anyway, chapter 5. Oh no, that's the end of monthly number 16. Our next monthly
Installment
number
will be
will be
with
monthly
you.
number 17 shortly. Thank you for watching.
Pom 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 pom.